webinar for the Indigenous Student Summer Internship Program for the 2024 cohort. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that BioCanRx as a national network, most of our employees are situated on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And I personally would like to respect and acknowledge our traditional hosts and thank them for allowing us to operate on this land. So as I mentioned, I personally am in Ottawa, Ontario, which is part of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people's territory. So again, I'd like to thank Stephanie for introducing herself. This is a fairly small group. I know it's on webinars, so it's a faceless crowd, but we're among friends. There's not too many of us, so feel free to jump in the box. And I encourage dialogue as we go through. And for the sake of today's session, there are different options. So I think most of you would probably prefer to use the Q&A feature, but if you'd prefer to raise your hand, I'd be happy to unmute you and you can then speak if you prefer to do that. So as I mentioned, questions are very much encouraged. This is an informational webinar, so really the purpose is to provide you all with the information you may need to apply to the program directly, or perhaps you are looking for more information from a different perspective, either as a supervisor or a research administrator or anything else. So with that being said, you can find all of the information we'll be talking about today, the recorded video in particular, on a web page that I'll link to a little bit later on. And that will also be linked to our YouTube page. So it's YouTube at BioCanRx. So to kick us off, I'd like to describe a little bit more about what and who we are at BioCanRx. I know it's a bit of a mouthful and people have different conceptions of who and what we are. So BioCanRx is a national federally funded not-for-profit network that is trying to bring promising cancer immunotherapies from bench to bedside. And so the way we do that is multifold, but in one big respect, we are funding research across Canada by Canadian investigators at academic institutions with their cancer immunotherapy research projects that are all the way from kind of those early animal studies through to early phase clinical trials. And our second goal at BioCanRx is to build a strong and vibrant cancer biotherapeutics community in Canada. And so that really involves engaging many different types of stakeholders and developing programs to fill gaps and provide training needs. And so training within our network is also a really big priority area. And it's within that training component of BioCanRx that this Indigenous Student Summer Internship Program falls. And so just to put that into somewhat of an infographic that I pulled from a video on our About BioCanRx page, basically these are just some of the elements that we do in kind of high-level terms, but the ones I would focus on and reiterate again are training our researchers in the best practices that are needed for cancer immunotherapy, and also funding different types of research projects within that area. And so now I'll jump over to talking a little bit more about the internship program. So at a glance, this is an opportunity for undergraduate students attending universities across Canada to complete a 14-week internship with the goal being to gain hands-on research or policy experience in cancer. So the 14-week period is completed in the summer, so from May to the end of August, and it comes with a $9,000 award. I'd also like to acknowledge OICR as being one of our key partners in supporting this program. So they are supporting up to 3 awards for students who are completing their research in Ontario-based institutions. So as I mentioned, the goals of this program are first and foremost to provide that meaningful hands-on research or policy experience, so working closely with an investigator on an independent project throughout the summer. And secondly, it's to promote and strengthen Indigenous students' participation in cancer as a whole. So that can be cancer research, it can be cancer policy, and to provide opportunities for networking, mentorship, hands-on practical experience opportunities. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. And I just realized I can't see hands up. So if you are trying to ask a question, maybe poke me in the chat box, and if your hand is up, I'll make sure that I look there at that point. But to move on, the benefits that we see and that have been identified to us by our students in the past are multifold. So first and foremost, of course, you are able to conduct a research or policy project in the area of cancer. There's obviously going to be an opportunity to do network and community building, not only in the labs in which you would be working, but also with the whole cohort of summer students that are participating in this program. There's also going to be an opportunity to attend our Summit for Cancer Immunotherapy that I'll talk about in a few slides. And in all these ways, basically, we're hoping that you have an opportunity to learn from others, to do some peer-to-peer learning, and to get a better sense of what cancer research and policy looks like and the careers that may come with that and the opportunities that you may want to look into a little bit more. It provides you an opportunity of what you like and equally important, what you may not like, right? You may come out of this internship and say, that project wasn't for me. And I think at your level of training, that's a really good thing to have. So we hope you like it. We hope it's something that you want to pursue. But if you decide, that's not for me, that's a good outcome, I think, as well. And then there's an opportunity to attend webinars that are hosted by BioCanRx. So throughout the year, we offer different types of webinars to different types of audiences. And some of them are through for instance, our summer summit speaker series. Those tend to be focused on research and what's going on in our network. And they can also be more oriented toward, for instance, our HQP, so our highly qualified personnel, which in essence encapsulates our trainees, our graduate students, our undergraduate students, and other members who are really essential within the kind of highly qualified personnel community within our network. And I see a question. So Ali, this is open specifically to students who are in Canadian institutions. So if you're an international student attending university at a Canadian institution, then yes, it would be. And sorry, I cut myself off. Thanks, Ali, for the question. So where was I? Yeah. So, and then they're specifically within the summer student program, and I'll talk about this in more detail on one of the next slides, is a professional development series that was built specifically for the summer student cohort. So that's again just more about building your knowledge of translational research, how to write an abstract, how to communicate your science, things like that. And then finally, and as I mentioned, the studentship comes with an all expenses paid opportunity to attend our scientific conference, the Summit for Cancer Immunotherapy. And again, I'm saying this a lot, but we'll talk about these in more detail. So a question has come in, how do we get on the mailing list? That's a great question. So in hindsight, I should have put it in the registration, but Stephanie, if you email me, and I'll have my email up on one of these slides, just consenting to join the BioCanRx email list, I'd be glad to add you, and that would go to anyone. So yeah, just send me an email and I'll be happy to add you to the main BioCanRx newsletter. And then we also have one for trainees. Yeah, thanks guys, great questions. So talking a little bit more about those professional development webinars, there are a number of them. So the first one is an orientation, and then there's going to be one on summer students, basically describing their experience with the summer studentship, what they took out of it, what they recommend doing, their tips and tricks, and things like that. And then there's going to be one by researchers within our network on navigating the world of research. And that's another opportunity that's panel-based. It's an opportunity to ask questions, and it's a dialogue. It's very much meant to be a conversational type of webinar. And then the next three are really focused on gearing up for a scientific conference. So how do you write a scientific abstract? How do you visually and orally communicate your research? And another one on more broadly Science Communication 101. And then the final one is how to network. And this is something that folks struggle with throughout their professional careers. So then if we want to, we'll dive in a little bit about the Summit for Cancer Immunotherapy. So this is a really fun opportunity within our network to bring together all of the different stakeholders and individuals that are part of our broader network. So that includes our researchers, that includes the trainees, it includes our industry partners, it includes clinicians in our network, and it includes our patient partners as well. And so at the summit, it's like a scientific conference where you have an opportunity to do a lot. So that can range from, listening to talks by invited internationally and national speakers. It obviously will include a lot of networking. It's a conference that has about 350 people attending. There are some fun social events. There's a day dedicated to trainees for their professional development, scientific presentations, a public forum, a debate, and then I'd like to end just talking about the poster session, because this is where you will have an opportunity to present the work that you completed as part of your summer internship. And so again, going back to the previous slide, this is really what we're talking about. So we'll really help to prepare you guys from our perspective of how we think that you can go into that with confidence, with excitement, and hopefully getting out some of those exciting things that come from attending a scientific conference. And so I'd like to highlight that right now we're still making final touches on the date for our next conference, but it will be taking place within in 2025. I'm just going to check the Q&A. Yeah, so I'll bring my email up in a couple of slides from now. So I think we talked a lot about this, but in terms of diving even deeper into the summit, like I said, there will be trainee-specific events. We talked about the poster presentation, and I think I went through all of these in a little bit on the previous slide. So now I'd like to dive into what the summer student projects can look like. So I'd really like to comment here, and something that maybe some of you have caught on to, is that BioCanRx is specific in the area of cancer immunotherapy. That's our mandate. However, based on our Indigenous working group, our Indigenous summer student working group, they said it might be beneficial to open it up because undergraduate students in general, it's too niche. It might be a little bit too niche. So open it up, and we did so based on their recommendation. And so now the program and projects that are eligible fall within a broader category of, like I mentioned, cancer research or cancer policy. So within those, different types of research can include clinical, social, and economic impact research. So these types of projects aim to study the potential solutions to social, legal, or ethical barriers to cancer and patient care. It can include or encompass Indigenous knowledge, so projects that study cancer or to develop strategies with an Indigenous knowledge framework. It can include knowledge translation. And so this is where it may tie in a little bit to policy work, but these include the development, implementation, or measurement of materials, processes, policies, applications to improve cancer-related knowledge for Indigenous people or to a broader population. And then finally, and this is the majority of the work that we tend to do in our group, are lab-based research projects. And so these are projects that generally take place in a laboratory setting, tend to be focused on mechanisms of action or clinical work that relates to testing a specific type of substrate that may have therapeutic benefit in cancer immunotherapy or in cancer. So this tends to be one of the bigger, this tends to be one of the questions that we receive a lot of what falls into this. If you have any questions about this, I'd be happy to answer them either in this webinar or offline by email. And again, just to say this again, even though our our network is focused on cancer immunotherapy, projects within the Indigenous Student Summer Internship Program can include cancer more broadly and also policy work. So there's a great question. So what about computational or bioinformatic research, usually DNA or RNA research? Yes, if it has a cancer focus, for sure. Yeah. And so just to put this into a bit of a clearer view, I've listed here 5 projects, or the titles of 5 projects that our summer students have completed in the past. And so you'll see that the first 3 have some policy implications, um, tend to be at the population or epidemiological kind of level. So those would fall into the clinical, social, economic impact studies. They're very much focused on Indigenous health, and these are fantastic projects. And then the other 2 examples here are projects that the students are working with funded investigators within our network. And so these 2 are more specific to our cancer immunotherapy mandate. All of these projects were excellent, and they all fall within the purview of this program, just as some examples. Okay, and I'm just looking at the questions here, doing a little housekeeping. Perfect. So in terms of how to apply, so the first note that I would say is that all of the materials are on our website, and in fact, I'll link to that right now. And there are 2 different documents listed on the web page. So there's the application details document, and this is a fairly lengthy PDF document that outlines all of the details that you would need to know about the program. And then there's also the application form, and that lists out what you need to fill out to actually complete the application. And so as a next step, if you haven't already, I recommend reading both of those in detail because they should outline all of the information you would know. In terms of a couple of really important points for you to consider for next steps, the first is that the student and the supervisor must complete the application together. So what that means is that the first step is you finding a supervisor with whom you'd like to work. And I'll provide an example of tips of how to reach out in my next slide. Then the student is responsible for a statement of intent, and that's described in the application form. And finally, the student and the supervisor will co-develop information regarding the research project together. So generally how this works, and it differs supervisor to supervisor, but the first thing that you'll want to do, and maybe I'll jump to this slide right now, is research a little bit. Sorry, Seven, give me 1 second here. So the first thing is researching supervisors, and we can support you in some degree. There's also a link to supervisors in the program details document for our network. Again, it's not exhaustive to who you may wish to work with. But it's doing a little work, finding what your passions are, and then reaching out. So in terms of that, that's something that you somewhat have to do independently. If you're really struggling to find a supervisor, again, poke me, and I can support you in that respect. And yeah, and then it's a matter of reaching out. So these are just some tips that I've seen being helpful, but of course, use your judgment and use kind of your own experiences here. But in terms of reaching out to potential supervisors, first of all, you want to introduce yourself and you want to be yourself, right? You want to just give them a little taste via email of who you are. It's really important when you're describing your interest in working with this supervisor to tailor and personalize your interest in working with them and make it clear that you've done a little bit of research. So you have a sense of what their lab is doing, you have a sense of what potential projects you could be working on are. You could even go so far as to suggest a project. And so this is what I was going to say earlier, is that you could even suggest a project, and perhaps that's what you move forward with. Oftentimes the supervisor has a need already, and so it may not be possible that you work on that project, but it certainly shows that you're motivated, that you're enthused, that you have a good sense of what projects they may be working on, and that's just a great place to start from. And so next, you want to align and make clear what your interests in your academic or career goals are with what their project work would look like and what they are doing, what they're working on. And then at this point, so this is I've got two thoughts on this. So it's at this point that I would say that you want to highlight the opportunity of the BioCanRx Indigenous Student Summer Internship Program by briefly describing what it is, highlighting the length, so it's that May to August term. The fact that it comes with a $9,000 award is important because that means that it offsets their cost, right, for taking you on as a student, and that may be a budgetary constraint for them to take on a summer student. So that's always a good thing to highlight in the email. And of course, noting the deadline. So that, and I will come to a key dates next, but the deadline for this will be February 16th. And so given that you have to write, the project together, I'd highlight that it's, time sensitive at some point and you'd want to have a meeting sooner rather than later to discuss further. So the second point I was going to make in terms of kind of the two thoughts is that because of the orientation that I'm coming from, you are wanting to apply to this program. I'd say at one point or another, you'll want to make it clear whether you're interested in working with them, even if they're not interested in applying. I don't know why that would be the case, but just, I guess, go in mindful of how that conversation might go. Or maybe you find a researcher and things work out in a different way. So I would just highlight that. So then in terms of key dates, as I mentioned, the deadline to apply is February 16th. And so between that February 16th and awardee notification date is when we bring together a panel of reviewers to review applications. And so we have a certain number of spots. I don't know what to anticipate this year. It varies year to year, but the applications will be reviewed, and it may be that we can only take a certain number of students to the program. If there are more people applying than spots that we have available. In late April, so this is once the students are notified and the awards are set, our investigators take equity, diversity, and inclusivity training. And so this is training for the primary supervisor, so the network or the investigator, but it's also for the person who has been identified as who is going to be supervising you as the student. And then finally, the student is encouraged to participate in this as well. Then the program begins in early May and it ends in late August. And so let me just see here. So oh, interesting. So Stephanie, I don't know. That's a weird issue. The link does work though. Okay, yeah, that I don't know about. But I hope it's working. I hope it's working for others too. But I'll keep this on the screen just so that you can see it clearly. But if you go to BioCanRx and then training and then internships, from there, excuse me, we have two different programs. So there's a summer student program and the Indigenous student, or yeah, Indigenous student summer internship program. I'll just wait one moment so you guys can take a screenshot. And apologies, I should have put a QR code on this slide. So from that page, you'll also be able to navigate a lot of other information, again, just to help you kind of get a sense of what their summer student program is about. So we have a number of students who have participated in our Q&A across the years of the program. And this is just an opportunity for our students to tell everyone what they worked on, what the benefits were. And so I encourage you to take a look at that. These three students listed up here were Indigenous and non-Indigenous students who participated in the 2023 cohort. And then listed down here are all of the students who have participated in the program going all the way back to 2016. Sorry, Ali, I'm not sure I follow your question. To general attendees, what do you mean? Do you mind uh, explaining what you mean? And so while you do that, I'll move on here. But thanks for the question. I'm not sure I fully understand it. So then, this is my contact information. So absolutely write this down. I'd be happy to receive any questions from you or any considerations and go from there. And so I'll leave that up just for a quick moment as well. And I'll put that on in a moment as well. That maybe is the slide I'll end on. So next up, so like I mentioned at the beginning, I would be so happy to add you to our email list. So, and we have two of them. So the first email list is BioCanRx's newsletter, and that goes out to a really big audience, and it covers different network activities, and it's a good read if you're interested in what we do. And then the second one is specific to our HQP, so our highly qualified personnel, and those are the trainees. And that's where we do targeted emails about different training opportunities, about webinars that are specifically fitting to you as assuming you're all trainees, but to other people as well. So if you have any interest in participating to this program, I recommend joining our mailing list. And to do so, you can email me at my email. And then I'd also like to highlight that we are on all social media, from LinkedIn, Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at BioCanRx. With respect to LinkedIn, we have two, sorry, this is convoluted, but we have two LinkedIn pages. So we have our main BioCanRx page, and then we also have a group called BioCanRx HQP Association. And this group is specific to trainees. And again, this is another way of getting information on different activities. We put job postings in there. I encourage other people to post in that group as well. And it's just a nice kind of virtual way to stay in touch with the broader community, or the trainee community. And so just a word of advice, the HQP association group is a little bit hard to find. So you have to type it in almost exactly as it is. And again, if you can't find it, feel free to email me and I can send you the direct link. So with that, I will end with my contact information. But to answer Stephanie's question, does the PI need to contribute 9,000 as well? No, that's not the case. It may be that they wish to top up the student, but that's not something that we necessitate in the same way as, for instance, the NSERC program does. So no. Yeah, good question. So that, okay. So if you are, so yeah, of course. So Ali, the question is, I'm not a professional in biology. Am I eligible to apply? Absolutely. So this program actually encourages individuals who aren't necessarily in biology or life sciences. It may be that you're in policy, or that you're in Indigenous studies, or you list it, you name it, any other program. The key is defining a topic, a project that fits within the program. So you could be in any field, and if the topic that you're interested in studying falls into cancer research or cancer policy, then that project would be eligible to apply. Yeah. So, Stephanie, at that point, that would be the um, purview of the university potentially. So the question was, you know, is there a top up? Is there a forced top up? Maybe the institutions do top up. And this may be something that BioCanRx actually should look into a little bit closely now that inflation rates are going up again, because we had set the salary to be above minimum wage, but it may be actually that we need to do a closer look and reevaluate. So whether there is a top up to, for instance, co-op students, that would be a university level point. But great questions, and I think it's good for everyone to know kind of how everyone thinks about this, whether you're a student or not. It might be a bit boring for others, but great questions all around. So yeah, happy to talk to you and others about those types of things. So I'm just looking to see, oh, good. Okay, Ali, I'm glad that was clear. Perfect. So I think that that's all I have. Again, I very much encourage you to look into it, to see if it's a good fit for you, and to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd be very happy to answer them. And I look forward, hopefully, to seeing some applications coming from you as if you're a student interested in applying. So with that, again, I'll just end by saying that this will be recorded. It'll be available on our website, along with all of those other materials regarding the program details and application form. So nice to see some engagement over the chat. I really welcome it, and thank you, and great questions. And otherwise, have a great day, and we've kept it short and sweet. Thanks, everyone. Take care, everyone. Bye.